Don't forget to donate to the hashtag Daytona Dream 2019 GoFundMe for your chance in January to win one of these 3 Kevin Harvick diecast. Now enjoy the video. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome here as we get ready to finish out the weekend here from Riki Raceway. It is the Division 2 drivers' turn as we get ready for our next to last race of the regular season. We start to put together the playoff picture for these drivers. 8 drivers will represent here in Division 2 for this season's chase for the championship in the Skittles Super Speedway Series. 30 laps of racing here tonight at the Riki Raceway. We had a heck of a race in last night's Division 1 race, expecting no less here tonight. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a moment of silence for the number 27, because that is the streak-ending number of different drivers sitting on the pole since the start of this season. Benny Watson sits on the pole for the second time this year, the first driver to do it twice this season. He had the pole at M&M Super Speedway earlier on in the year, and in Friday night's qualifying session became the first driver to become a repeat pole sitter in the Skittles Super Speedway Series. He ends the streak at 27, but he'd love to be able to do something even better than be a repeat pole sitter. He'd love to be a race winner, as he's got himself good starting track position. He'll line up alongside of former pole sitter in his own right, Zachary Fitzwater. Now Watson comes into this race currently situated in the 26th position in points, so he could use a win and a little bit of help heading into Orlando. Zachary Fitzwater, on the other hand, he'd like to be able to just get into the top 30 in points. He's 31st in the standings coming to this race, but right now, there are, at this point, I would say only 4 drivers that are confirmed making it into the playoffs right at this point. They would be Charles Sandfer. He's got 2 wins, obviously. His win last week at Zandvoorts, locking him a spot up in the playoffs, and we'll tell you the others in just a moment. Let's go down and get the command.
Drivers, start your engines!
Now, all the other drivers that currently would be locked into the playoffs would be with 1 win and where they are positioned in points. Right now, they would be the points leader, Fury Gamington. Gamington comes into this race with a huge points gap from himself back to the driver that currently holds the 8th seed in the playoff grid. Jeff Scott, who is second in the point standings, he's had back-to-back good weeks at Texas World and at Zandvoorts, so right now he would be locked into the playoffs. And John Andrews, also 5th in the point standings, he currently would be locked into the playoffs, and he's rolling off from the 3rd position here tonight. 2 drivers that could lock themselves playoff spots, regardless of what happens next week at Orlando: Keith Batson, Alex Benyacko. If they could both finish inside the top 10, top 15 here tonight, they would probably be locked in as well. Then you get down to the point of where it gets really interesting. Right now, the 7th seed is Eric Sadler. The 8th seed is Vince Almariego. They currently sit 17th and 22nd in the point standings overall. Almariego right now in that bubble spot. Driver he has to worry about, drivers like Caleb Farrell, William Brock, Nathan Ormond, and Sedale Salera. Those drivers right now are 30th, 32nd, 33rd, and 34th in the points. But why does he have to worry about them? Because if they get a second win here tonight and get into the top 30 in points, they jump up, tied for the number 1 seed with Charles Sandfer. There's also a number of other drivers that, with a win here tonight, getting their first win of the season, could put themselves into playoff competition. And we'll talk about them in just a moment. Right now, we're going to quickly tell you what the overall points battle for the regular season championship looks like. 38 points the gap now from Fury Gamington back to Jeff Scott, Karson Gum, and William Flickinger. They're only 39 points out, so it could get close if Gamington runs into trouble again here tonight. But here we go, 30 laps of racing at Riki Raceway. Let's roll! So Benny Watson, Zachary Fitzwater side by side to turn 1. So here's the long list of drivers that, if they went to victory lane here tonight, could put themselves in position to battle for a playoff spot heading into next week at Orlando. They would include Karson Gum, William Flickinger, Kyle Langeland, Nathan Stapleton, Jack Hallec, Michael Norman, Tristen Allen, Dillon Young, Oneal Balvin, Jordan Lopes, Simon Bloomfield, Alex Gray, Trey Wright, Adam Garcia, and then Cody Llamas, Alexander Rowe, Simon Salera, Benny Watson, Patrick Smith, Chris Maley, Daniel Voyles all have a shot, but they need to win here tonight. As John Andrews to the inside, he's one of the drivers coming to this race that's locked into the playoffs. And now he's Voyles trying to get his second win of the season. Sandfer was the first driver to do it here in Division 2, having the win back at Pepsi Super Speedway and then last week at Zenjoltis. Comes into this race 11th in the point standings, and with the 2 wins, mathematically would not fall out of the top 30 in the point standings in the next 2 races. As now Oneal Balvin will slot into second. Here comes Michael Norman, who sat on the pole for last week's Zenjoltis race. He'll now put the 3 in third, and now the 4 is in fifth, or 4 is in fourth, rather. Boy, I thought that was going to roll off the tongue very well, and it did not, as Simon Salera currently in 4th place. Now here comes Dillon Young up the inside line there in the 2. Dillon Young coming into this race currently positioned down in the 14th position in points. A win would lock himself up potentially a playoff position. There are a couple of drivers I know as the caution is out, so I won't be able to finish that point just yet. And that was a drag race to the line between Oneal Balvin and Michael Norman, but Balvin won out just barely. First caution of the evening takes place here on lap number 3. Much earlier yellow flag than we had in last night's race. I think it took till lap 9 for our first caution in Division 1, and looks like an incident on the back straightaway, hence the smoke, unless we're in London and the fog is set in. Wow, there was a lot of spinning there. Looks like the spin went all the way from turn 2 down to turn 3. Look at that, skid marks even going to that point. And it looks like William Flickinger is the car that was involved. And that was one of the drivers I was going to mention, so I guess I can make the point now. There are some drivers that, with a win, would lock themselves up a playoff spot regardless of next week at Orlando, and 2 of them were involved in this wreck. I just saw Karson Gum back there. William Flickinger was another. If they had won tonight, they would have been locked into the playoffs. And Flickinger and Gum are out of the race. Oh, there's Alex Benyacko. He's one of the drivers that needed a good run tonight to lock himself up a spot. And the points leader, Fury Gamington. Trouble has struck him again. Jesse Turner, Trey Wright are on pit road. I believe that was Rob Evans in the 65, it was. There is Benyacko, Nathan Ormond in the 95. Former winner this season, needed to get back into the top 30 in points to be able to battle for a playoff spot. And I think I see a little bit of damage on the hood of Jeff Scott. So while Scott is currently running out on the track, and of course he's trying to run down Fury Gamington for the overall points lead on the regular season, he did not get away from the incident unscathed. Jesse Turner returns back to the track, as does Evans, Ormond, Wright, and Benyacko, trying to keep his playoff hopes alive, as Oneal Balvin will lead us under the first caution of the evening. And boy, just like that, a lot of our question marks all of a sudden have turned to exclamation points in terms of the playoffs. Let's take a look and see what happened for our first caution of the day back on lap 3. I think this is going to start back around the William Flickinger machine, and are they going to try 4 wide? That's Cody Llamas way up top side. Fitzwater's going to get to the inside of Llamas. Flickinger's to the inside of him. That's Sedale Salera down the bottom. Yep, they were 4 wide. No way that's going to work, especially off of turn 2 here, where it just kind of accordions up. It's like very spacious through the turns, and then it narrows as you get to the exit of the corner. Flickinger's going to get into Kyle Langeland. Saves it, though. There's Benyacko. Oh, Benyacko is way out of shape. He got tagged by Karson Gum. And then there you see Flickinger's going to get Fitzwater, and it just blocks the track up. I think Alexander Rowe's back there. He got a piece of it. There's Turner trying to make his way through. Chris Maley. There's Fury Gamington in the 10. Never slowed up. Runs into Fitzwater. Trey Wright tries to come to a stop. I think he does. There's Josh Drake. He was involved in the 66. And they're still wrecking further up here again with Flickinger, Ormond, Fitzwater, and Gum. Oh, and then there's Rowe, and he's going to get into Karson Gum. That flips the 19 over. Karson Gum, who came into this race 3rd in the points, was trying to run down Fury Gamington for the points lead. Same for William Flickinger. Both of them involved in this one. And also involved, in some small way, was Jeff Scott. There's Scott and there's Fury Gamington, the 2 that are kind of getting this battle heated up here, possibly heading to Orlando for the regular season championship. Now let's see where Jeff Scott got his damage from. Oh, there it was right there. I think he ran into the back of Benyacko. Evans up and into the wall. At this point, well, actually, no, I guess Jeff Scott ran into the back of Evans. I thought he got into the back of Benyacko, and I think he's going to actually get into Alexander Rowe right here, as Rowe got into Benyacko and spun as well. So it's narrowing down for certain now in terms of this division's regular season point standings championship. Looks like it might be a one-on-one battle between a couple of Dodge drivers next week in Jeff Scott and Fury Gamington, depending on how Scott finishes out the race. Because a number of other drivers that I thought might also be some contenders, Flickinger and Karson Gum, looks like they might be out of the race early, and that might have taken them out of contention, not only for competing for the regular season championship, but putting them into pretty much a must-win situation into next week's race at Orlando if they're going to make any kind of last-ditch attempt to get into the playoffs. Lights have gone out atop the pace car. We're getting the 1 green signal. We will go back green on lap 8 of 30, but there will be a couple of drivers that will not make it back to the line for this restart, and they include Fury Gamington, Josh Drake, Alexander Rowe, Zachary Fitzwater, William Flickinger, Kyle Langeland, Karson Gum, and Chris Maley. All of them with the exception of Fury Gamington now in a definite must-win situation heading into next week in order to make it into the playoffs. None of them have been to victory lane. Fury Gamington already locked into the playoffs, but obviously did not want this DNF because now he's got to worry about Jeff Scott, who is going to try and cut even more into his points lead. So with Fury Gamington finishing in the 33rd position, we'll see where Jeff Scott finishes out the day and how many points he may be able to gain, how good of a battle it will be for the regular season championship heading next week at Orlando. So 32 cars still remain, all of them on the lead lap. The last of them, Alex Benyacko, trying to keep his playoff hopes alive, needs a good finish to have a locked-up spot heading into next week at Orlando, as Oneal Balvin will lead Michael Norman, Simon Salera, Dillon Young, and John Andrews down to the green flag, as it will come back out on lap number 8. It's Galloway, Bloomfield, Almariego, Sandfer, and Garcia, the top 10 on this restart. Till these drivers start to get a little bit fanned out. Before I drop back, I want to take a look at a couple of drivers in positions where they are running right now that come into this race not quite yet confirmed into the playoffs. They come into this race in the 7th and 8th seeds. One of them is the teammate to the car out in front right now, and that is the 14 of Eric Sadler, our winner from Talladega. Right now he's back in the 24th position. He's got to hope that nobody ahead of him in the points goes to victory lane here tonight. Jeff Scott right now looks like he is not up to speed. He's back in the 27th spot, so right now he would only gain, I think, 6 points on Fury Gamington at this point in time. And then we also got to look for Vince Almariego. Comes in that critical 8th seed in the point standings right now. There he is up on the top side. Last time by was in 12th. I think he's faded back a bit as he's been stuck on the outside line. He's now crossing the line back in 25th, so he dropped like a stone. As up front, we had a change for the lead. Jake Galloway to the inside. Now Simon Bloomfield going to challenge for the spot. Bloomfield comes into this race currently in the 18th position in points, and he's ahead of Vince Almariego in the standings. He's actually right behind Eric Sadler in points, 3 points back, so if he won, he would possibly get into the playoffs. And Charles Sandfer, he wants to leave everybody in the dust. He wants to get his 3rd win of the season, try and go back-to-back. He won the 2nd race last week at St. Joltis, but now here comes the pole sitter, Benny Watson, back to the front. Benny Watson, 26th in the point standings. He is, 21 points, I think? Yeah, 21 points back behind, 11 points, behind Vince Almariego. So if Almariego stays back there and Benny Watson's able to win, he would maybe get into a playoff position. And there's William Brock. William Brock, our winner from Armory. Remember that fuel strategy win he had there? 2nd race of the season. Well, William Brock comes into this race 32nd in the point. Yes, he's outside the top 30 in the standings, but he's only 5 points back from 30th in the points. And if he goes to victory lane for a 2nd time and gets it back into the top 30 in points, he shoots up, tied for the number 1 seed with Charles Sandfer. So obviously, for this team, it's all about winning at this point in time. I think the same can be said for Caleb Farrell as well as Sedale Salera. Nathan Ormond He's got damage, and he's quite a ways back, so I don't think he's going to win this race. But for Farrell, Brock, and Sedale Salera, it's all about winning right now. Because the second win and moving to the top 30 in points, you've got yourself up there in a tie for the #1 seed. Smith now to the inside. There's Cody Llamas in the 15. Llamas coming into this race, currently situated in the... If I can find him here. There he is, 23rd position in the point standings. Didn't have a good run last week at Zen Joltis. Patrick Smith did have a good run. He's now 27th in points. Both those drivers within striking distance of Vince Almariego. And there's Nathan Stapleton. Now, I went back when I was talking about Karson Gum and William Flickinger, seeing that they were damaged and probably going to be out of the race. Now, as I said, there are a couple of drivers that coming into this race, if they were to win, they would head into Orlando locked in to a playoff position. Karson Gum and William Flickinger would have been two of those. Other ones that would fit that criteria also include Kyle Langeland, Nathan Stapleton, Jack Hallec, and Michael Norman. They would head into Orlando and they would be locked into a playoff spot. Is now Tristen Allen up there in the second position. Tristen comes into this race 13th in points, so a win would put him into a playoff position. But look at this, Vince Almariego. We saw him stuck on the outside line. Now he's on the inside line working his way back to the front. He's now up in the 4th position, right behind Caleb Farrell. I don't think he wants to be pushing that 96, because if Farrell wins, he's 30th in points. He would knock Vince Almariego out of the playoff grid. So Almariego's got to find a way to get the 96 out of there, and 96 is actually going to maybe try and go for a lap lead. Caleb Farrell took the checkered flag in the season opener for the Division II drivers back at Daytona. But since then, it's been a bit of a bumpy ride. 14 races later, he finds himself just barely in the 30th position in the standings. Battle will now be on for second. Adam Garcia there in the 29. Garcia had been steadily climbing his way up through the points and made his way up as high as 15th in the standings. Last week, a poor performance at Den Joltis dropped him down to 21st, but another driver that with a win could put himself in a playoff spot. And there's Eric Sadler. Now, if Eric Sadler were able to get a good finish, he might be able to make it where Vince Almariego's on the hot seat heading into Orlando, and Sadler might be okay for making it into the playoffs, but still a long ways to go in this one. We just barely, a moment ago, got past the halfway point. There's Keith Batson on the bottom. He's now up to 5th place. Another driver that with a good finish will find himself locked up into the playoffs, heading into Orlando next week. He's got a rear deck lid full of Alex Gray, who's trying to come off a poor performance last week. Alex Gray had pit road troubles at Zen Joltis, had him drop 5 spots in the standings down to 19th, but another driver fits the criteria of if he wins, he'd be in playoff competition heading into Orlando. With James Shelly, the 71, 23 of Jake Galloway, those two drivers, they just want to win to be able to at least get a silver lining what's been a dark cloud. Shelly did manage to do something last week at Zen Joltis, and that was he managed to get out of dead last in points. Jake Galloway now is dead last in points. They might be able to gain a little bit more ground if they finish well here tonight, because we know that Jesse Turner and Rob Evans ran into issues earlier on tonight, as did Josh Drake. So they might be able to gain at least some spots in the point standings here this evening with a good run. Is Jack Hallec, Michael Norman, two drivers that if they win, they're locked into the playoffs regardless of what happens next week at Orlando. For Michael Norman, he would be heading to a home track actually next week, and I'm certain he would love to do it as a race winner and a driver that knows he would be contending for the championship, as the top 4 now all single file. I don't think anybody came to pit road under that early caution we had back on lap 3, so that's another thing that these drivers might have to start considering, and that is green flag pit stops, because I know the whole field came to pit road when we had the caution come out back on lap 9 in the Division 1 race, so that gave the indication they could not make it the full 30-lap race on fuel. So these drivers might have to start thinking about that. And that could certainly shuffle it up into the finishing results of this race. It's now Michael Norman to the inside of Keith Batson. He's going to have some help couple of teammates lined up nose to tail. Nathan Stapleton and Benny Watson. Two drivers trying to find victory lane to lock themselves up a spot in the playoffs. Their teammate Carter Friesen had a great run in last night's Division 1 race, finished in the top 5. Caleb Farrell trying to get his second win of the season. Now Michael Norman at the inside. Boy, Michael is taking no prisoners. And everybody seems to be willing to go with the 3. He must be a very fast machine because that's the second or third time I've seen him step out of line. And everybody darts and migrates to the inside line to help him. So now Michael out in front. Whoa! No love lost between teammates right there. Benny Watson stuck his nose to the inside of Nathan Stapleton and was not willing to let his teammate back down. He'll now move into second. He's got Jack Hallec there with him. He'll move into third. Ray will move up to fourth possibly as that inside line begins to make forward progress. So we didn't get a clear idea of what the fuel window was in last night's race because of 2 cautions that came out. But we are nearing 8 laps to go, so who's got what it takes on fuel to maybe make it the rest of the way? And if none of these drivers can make it, when do they decide to start making these pit stops? That might be the answer. Hallec is coming to pit road. James Shelly is in as well. And this is what might be the difference maker into who's going to win and who is not. Halleck's hitting pit road first. Got some of these drivers back here that were damaged and off the pace that are pitting. Benyacko is one of them, Jesse Turner, Rob Evans. As now Michael Norman way out in front for the moment. Battle on for second between Stapleton and Watson. And now will Michael Norman come to the pit lane? Looks like he's coming. Yes, he is. Stapleton's in. And Benny Watson's going to stay out an extra lap. So we're going to have to see how that's going to help or hinder Benny Watson going for broke here. Started on the pole, would love to finish in the position he started, P1. I believe a couple of other drivers stayed out as well. Looks like Dillon Young, Jake Galloway, and John Andrews all elected to stay out an extra lap. James Shelly leaving pit road. That might hinder Benny Watson's ability to get to pit lane up to speed. Slow him down a little bit as looks like he will hit pit road now. Dillon Young will stay out. Dillon Young, who comes into this race 14th in points, now he's going to try and roll the dice and stay out an extra lap. He'll get himself a bonus point for a lap led. And now we're basically going to have to see the battle between Jake Hallec, Michael Norman, Benny Watson, and potentially Dillon Young. Where those 4 come out in relation to each other, because they were all the leaders of their respective packs hitting pit road. Looking to see where the 3 crosses the line in relation to the 13. And then we'll find out about the 79 and then later on the 2 when everything cycles around. Dillon Young now hits pit road. He's the last car to come to pit lane. Looks like Michael Norman might be the driver we want to focus on here. For the cycling of pit stops, it looked like he might be the one. No, actually, I think it's Stapleton now. And Stapleton would put himself in P1 as he's going to pass Benny Watson and Jake Galloway. So now he's just got to pass Dillon Young, and I think Nathan Stapleton would find himself as the race leader. With Jack Hallec in second, Shelly in third, Norman in fourth. And then it would be Jake Galloway and Benny Watson. Now where's the 2? There's the 2 leaving pit road. I don't think he's going to get out ahead of Nathan Stapleton. So I think it will be Stapleton who will cycle to the lead with Jack Hallec in second, James Shelly in third, Norman fourth, Galloway fifth, and Watson sixth. And when they hit the line, it will be 4 laps to go. Alex Benyacko at the start-finish line now. The leaders were in turns 3 and 4, so I don't think slower traffic's going to come into play. So now can Shelly and Norman catch up to these guys and make it a 4-man fight? For Stapleton, Hallec, and Norman, a win locks themselves up a confirmed spot in the playoffs. Shelly trying to play spoiler and get his first win of the season with what's been a very struggling year. I can't tell if Shelly's got the draft or not off these top 2. It looks like he might actually be reeling them in and losing Norman in the process. Not to turn 4. It will be 3 laps to go. The gap was about 4/10 from the leader back to Shelly. Let's see if it closed up or stayed the same on this lap, and it stayed the same. So Shelly's not really closing in right now in the 72. I think that's because right now the 13 is tucked right up to his back bumper. And I think for Jack Hallec, he kind of needs to lay off the 72 of Stapleton. Give him a little bit of space. Drop back to James Shelly, then he can get a run to be able to make a move, because right now I don't think that Jack Hallec being right up on the back bumper is going to get enough forward momentum to make a move on Stapleton for the win. And now you've got a pack of 3 here that are lined up. Jake Galloway, Dillon Young, and Benny Watson. Can they produce enough speed here to catch up with 2 laps to go? You're going to have to catch Michael Norman and James Shelly quick, as right now it is still nose to tail between Stapleton and Hallec. Stapleton is 7th in points, Hallec is 8th. Both drivers with a win would lock themselves up a spot into the playoffs regardless of what happens next week at Orlando. And this time by, they will see the white flag. That group of 3, I think, is too far back. Shelly's not close enough. It's going to be mano-a-mano, I think, between Stapleton and Hallec. Benyacko heading into turn 1. The leaders heading into turn 1 now. I don't think that Benyacko is going to be a factor for this win. Hallec's got to make a move down here in 3 and 4. He's got to make the move on the back straightaway, but I don't think he's got enough momentum to make it. He might have to ride and watch Stapleton take away a playoff position. Down through 3 and 4. Can Hallec make a move out of turn 4? I think he's too close. There's just not enough room for him to make the move. Nathan Stapleton will lock himself up a spot in the playoffs. He takes the checkers here tonight at Riki Raceway. And the last person that wanted to see that, the 56 of Vince Almariego. Because Almariego came in the 8th seed with a new, different winner. Right now it would be Stapleton in and possibly Almariego out. Now Almariego finished in the 8th position, so now he has to hope he finished better enough than Eric Sadler to stick Eric Sadler out of the playoffs and still sit in the 8th seed, which we will figure that out in just a moment. But Nathan Stapleton, this is his first top 5 finish on the year. 4 top 10s, but no top 5s. And his first top 5 is a win here tonight at Riki. I believe that is the first win of the season as well for Otter Island Motorsports. And for the team, they got the pole and the win here in Division 2 this weekend. Benny Watson got the pole. Stapleton capitalized with the win. And Stapleton started this race from the 36th position. So the old adage we say at super speedways, it's not about where you start, it's where you finish. And we now know that Nathan Stapleton will be a Toyota representative in the chase for the championship this season for Division 2. So we know that Almariego could have been eliminated out of the playoffs with that finish of first place by Nathan Stapleton. But where did he finish in relation to Eric Sadler? He finished in the 8th position. Sadler finished in 14th. The gap between Eric Sadler and Vince Almariego coming into this race was 14 points. No, I'm sorry, it was 18 points. And Almariego only gained 6 points on Eric Sadler. So right now, Almariego would be out and Eric Sadler would sit in the final transfer spot as far as the playoffs are concerned. He would be the driver on the hot seat, I do believe, heading into next week at Orlando. Although, Alex Benyacko, I think, might be on the hot seat as well. We'll find out in just a moment as we look down through the results here. Stapleton with the win. Jack Hallec going to finish in the second position. James Shelly brings it home in third, so back-to-back good finishes for that team. Michael Norman will finish the day out in 4th. This will keep him in the top 10 in points. Now next week, he heads to his home track needing a win. Same for Dillon Young. He's up there in points, but he needs a win. He's 5th. Jake Galloway, dead last in points, but he'll finish 6th. Benny Watson, great run for the pole sitter in 7th. Vince Almariego, 8th place, but finds himself on the outside looking in as far as the playoffs are concerned. How about the Saleras? Simon and Sedale in 9th and 10th. Keith Batson, 11th place. That's all he needed. He's locked into the playoffs now. And he will make it now, I think, 6 drivers confirmed locked into the playoffs at this point heading into next week at Orlando. Patrick Smith will finish in 12th. Caleb Farrell was 13th. Eric Sadler in 14th. He's going to be on pins and needles next week. Levi McIntire will get 15th. And it was Allen, Gray, Brock, Andrews, and Bloomfield, the rest of the top 20. And Alex Benyacko finished last car in the lead lap back there in 31st. Now I want to see about him in relation to Eric Sadler. Benyacko was 12th in the points. Sadler was 17th in the points. And the gap between the two was 21 points. Benyacko finished in 31st. Sadler in 14th. So Sadler gained 17 points. Wow, it's going to be really close with Benyacko and Sadler, hoping that we don't have another repeat winner, or at least a driver behind them in points going to victory lane for a second time next week at Orlando. Because if that's the case, it could come down between those two as to who's going to have the 8th and final seed in the playoffs. And of course, that big race took place back on lap 3, taking out a number of drivers: Fury Gamington, Josh Drake, Alexander Rowe, Zachary Fitzwater, William Flickinger, Kyle Langeland, Karson Gum, and Chris Maley, effectively taking Karson Gum and William Flickinger out of the battle for the regular season overall championship. But what about the battle between Jeff Scott and Fury Gamington? Well, looks like it's not going to be that terribly close. Jeff Scott finished 30th to Fury Gamington's 33rd, gains 3 points. It'll be 35 points separation between those two battling for the regular season championship. So right now, Fury Gamington looking like he's still in a good position, despite the bad couple of weeks he's had of winning the regular season championship. But Nathan Stapleton, talk about checking off your list. He got himself a win. He got himself a playoff berth. And now he heads into Orlando completely worry-free. He can go for broke and try and go for back-to-back wins to try and tie Charles Sandfer for the number 1 seed when the playoffs begin. But that's going to do it here tonight from Riki Raceway, and it will do it for the weekend. What a weekend it has been, and hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe, become part of the crew today. We have shown you full finish results. These are your overall point standings heading into next week's race from Orlando Super Speedway. These drivers will be turning right, as it's basically a reverse track. These drivers are technically going to be going backwards to the position, the direction they've been going all season long at the tracks we have been at, and we will determine the 8 drivers from Division 1, the 8 drivers from Division 2, culminating to the 16 drivers that will battle for this season's chase for the championship in the Skittles Super Speedway Series. You're not going to want to miss it. Knockout qualifying Friday night, Division 1 race Saturday night, Sunday night. We cap it off with the Division 2 race. Till then, I've been Seth Cole, and you've been watching a production of the NNSCRA Offline Racing at its best.